Hi there and welcome again to the Verse RPG's Believable RPG series. Today I'm going to talk about deities and gods, how to make a believable god. I'm not going to go and talk about theologies because that's going to be the subject of an entirely different video, and we've not got really the time to go down that kind of massive great rabbit hole. But let's talk about gods. Okay, so there are going to be in most fantasy universes something of this nature, some kind of either a creator god or some perhaps kind of lesser deity. Let's just assume, for the sake of an argument, we're talking about a kind of a creator god. We talked in the previous video about creation myths, so we can talk about creator gods here, and we'll move on to something else. Okay. It all depends on the kind of the parameters of fantasy you're setting. Okay, so if we think about the kind of the Tolkien universe, in the Tolkien universe, the gods there are the Valar, and for the most part, particularly in the Lord of the Rings books, you never really come across them. They have left humans and elves with the help of the Maiar, Gandalf, and unfortunately Saruman, who goes rogue. They've left them to work out their own business, their own fate, and the gods aren't going to get involved. That's one conception of the deity. The other conception of the deity, if you look at some of the early Forgotten Realms novels, gods are kind of popping up all over the place and having quite kind of interpersonal conversations with characters. And in the first iteration of Forgotten Realms, and also Dragonlance, and various other kind of fairly kind of mainstream D&D worlds, gods are like people you know, except rather powerful. I've always preferred, and this is just a matter of taste, the first version of the either the absent or the unknowable deity, because a god, particularly a universe-creating god, is such an extraordinary entity, something so far beyond the ability of a mortal creature to conceive of, that perhaps the only connection one might have with this unknowable entity is through dreams or prophecies, or what a very sparing act of kind of creation or destruction. So which one you go for is kind of up to you, but you have to really kind of set the level of fantasy and stick to it, because otherwise the whole system starts to kind of crumble into being unbelievable and inconsistent, and it confuses the players. If you want to have more personable deities, a god who makes himself known to the players and will be in touch with them via either some kind of prophet or priest, or through some sort of magical item, then that starts to shift what your universe is. It starts to kind of make it a slightly more kind of informal sort of universe, and the player's position within that universe is different. They're either so kind of connected to their god that they have special access, or everybody does, and then how godly is the god, and the more human your gods become, the less that they really appear to be gods. They just become powerful individuals. Thor in the Marvel universe, of course, is always referred to as a god, and he comes close to, for example, being killed by Thanos, so one questions whether there's immortality there, and he doesn't, of course, have any worshippers, which was what we'll move on to next. So the basis by which Thor is actually a god is debatable, but Marvel scholars, you leave your comments down below. So if you are creating gods, does this mean, and it doesn't always have to mean, does this mean that you must create religions to go with them? A god doesn't necessarily have to have a religion. A religion, of course, is generally created by mortals as a kind of a codified system of knowledge for interpreting not just a god, but morality and law and all these other things. Has the god communicated with mortals through some kind of holy text or something like that? Here again, we go into the realm of theology, but it's important to decide whether there is actually a theology, a religion, or a religious system of ideas that goes with your god. Your god might not necessarily have been a creator. There are plenty of gods throughout human history who aren't. You might choose to give your god a portfolio. You know, the god of thunder, the god of war, the god of justice, the god of X, Y, or Z. Or you might even decide that there is this a large pantheon of gods that have various portfolios. So when you look at the household gods that the Romans had, when you even find lesser gods, what we might think of as spirits or sprites or whatever, of things like the hearth or the doorway. And there is this really wonderful tradition of in pagan Rome of kind of animism, of imbuing everything with spirit, just as the Native Americans did. And for the Native Americans, there were godlike spirits in all the animals. And if you look at Shintoism, there's a kind of a rich element of this there too. So you might find that you have small gods, gods that watch over the family home, or gods that are responsible not just for physical places or objects, but for phenomena like luck or fate or time. And so those kinds of these kinds of basic settings, these foundational ideas, which is something we keep coming back to in these videos, are really, really important. Why? Because what you're doing when you create a deity or a god or a pantheon is you're giving an explanation to the metaphysical world around the players. So, for example, if you're explaining the physical world, whether they're in a city or whether they're in a forest or climbing up a mountain, that you can easily explain. This is the metaphysical world. This is the world beyond form, the world beyond the physical body, and that needs to be as carefully explained as anything else. Here in our reality, we know that, for example, gods made direct interventions into human affairs and played all sorts of games with one another in the Greek myths. Zeus and Hera were like an unhappy couple, constantly feuding with one another and using mortal playthings in order to do it. If you look at Judeo-Christian religions, the three Abrahamic religions of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, God doesn't really do that. God is God doesn't turn up to prove a point or play these sorts of games. Maybe there are a couple of moments in the Old Testament which arguably have made some questionable judgment calls, but for the most part, God doesn't really do that. And so setting out what kind of deity you have, what sorts of things they do, what presence they have in the world, how they shape the world, how they intervene, if they intervene at all, how much contact they have with mortals. Perhaps there has been a long, long time since any god interfered in mortal affairs at all, or communicated with mortals at all. In a later video, we'll look at evil gods, or evil deities, or perhaps kind of apostates, the kind of the repudiation of God. And I want to in a later video also talk about ideas of morality. There's not really kind of room here. If we're talking about good gods, what does good mean? It's a pretty subjective kind of thing. But like I said, that's a story for another time. Okay, so just to give you some exciting background on what we're doing here, if you're following these videos, we here at Arcverse Studios are the creators of Arclands, the Spellforger's Companion, and the Book of the Graces. These are our two Kickstarters that we launched in 2020 and 2021, and we have a Patreon, Arclands Online, which you can check out. If you go to our website, www.verserpg.online, and I'll put the links below, see all the stuff we're doing. We've got some amazing stuff and a really exciting God story there ourselves, which I'll do in a separate video. But do come and check us out, and if you can fund us on Patreon, that would be awesome, gratefully received, and we'll catch you on the next video. Thanks, all the best, bye bye.